Welcome back. Well, let's take a look in the wake of the Voice referendum that was lost at what sort of numbers the government is getting at the moment. In Newspoll, as the next big poll for the government after this referendum will be the federal election. Beginning, of course, with the two-party preferred and how this has been playing out. So what we're looking here is the election result, 52.1% to Labor. Then the high watermark, if you like, when they were still very much in honeymoon period, 57.43 to Labor. That was a few months after the election. A year after that, September 2023, 53 to 47. So we did see that come back quite a way. And the question was always going to be, from here, would this get worse after the Voice referendum? Was this just before all the blowtorch went onto the Albanese government? Will they be pleased to see it's back up to 54-46 because of a fairly strong primary vote? So way off this 57, but they'd be thrilled, frankly, with 54-46 in the next election. So two-party preferred, nothing to panic about for Labor. What about some of the states, though? Because that's what matters. It's a seat-by-seat contest in the next election, of course. WA was really good in 2022, 55 to 45 Labor on a two-party preferred basis. This latest Newspoll does have that coming off a bit, 53-47. In other words, a 2% swing against Labor. How could that play out in seats? Well, these are some of the Labor seats in terms of margins that are held at the moment in WA. Tangney, 2.4%, so that'll be right in the firing line. Hasluck, 5.9, and you can see Swan and Pearce at 8.8 and 9. Now, theoretically, out of reach in that sort of uniform swing. But remember, these seats in particular, these last three, huge swings against the LNP last time of 15 or so percent. And that usually means, doesn't guarantee it's coming back the other way in a big swing, but there are people here that voted Labor for the first time ever, many of them. So there is a possibility of big swings coming back if, of course, they're happy with the opposition. So at least seats to watch there in WA, which will be a battleground. New South Wales for Labor, it's actually looking really good right now if you look at the two-party preferred. At the election, not one of their better states, below the national average there at 51.4% for Labor two-party preferred. The latest Newspoll, 56%. That's a huge swing considering it is the biggest state, of course, in the nation. But there aren't a lot of seats here that are necessarily ripe for the plucking for Labor. So looking at New South Wales and the seats that are close in a Labor-Liberal context, Banks, you can see at 3.2%, so on a uniform swing, that would actually go. I'm not calling that, I'm just saying interesting it's within that margin. Lindsay higher, so the rest of the seats are above that. And I think Hughes and Hume in particular would really be considered still safe Liberal seats. Lindsay's an interesting one because it's beyond that swing of 4.6% that Newspoll suggests, and it has been really safe Liberal. But if you go back a decade, it was a swing seat, and it is in the heartland of Western Sydney. So I'm sure that will be at least a watch, albeit we've got a local member there that seems to have made it their own. What about the overall markers for Anthony Albanese? Better Prime Minister. This is something the Prime Minister of the day almost always leads. You can see back in May, Scott Morrison then against Anthony Albanese, 42% might look close. That's them drawing, but that's a measure that almost always favours the incumbent. So that was Anthony Albanese in a really good spot. That was just before the election. Then you get to after, that same period we looked at, September 2022, so the honeymoon period, 61 to 22%, so a commanding lead. That has pared back if you come to June, so you're almost rolling for a full year, June 23, 52-32. But again, what will please Labor is if you go forward another few months and you've got the worst for them of this referendum campaign where they've now lost it, 51-31. So that's barely changed. In fact, they've both lost 1%, and you can add the rest in the undecided. So that'll be the good marker for Anthony Albanese in terms of his contest with Peter Dutton. What will be a bit more of a worry is his performance, if you like, net satisfaction. Again, July 2022, just after the election, calling that the high watermark, 35%, 33% in December, a few months later, holding up really well. Suddenly, 6 months after that, a precipitous drop down to 18%, and now zero, neutral, as in just as many people think he's doing a good job as they do a bad job. So that will be something he'll want to improve on, given that that particular measure has been going pretty steadily down over the past 9 months or so.